Thank you guys so much. You're going to make a big man cry right here. Thank you, Charlita, and thank you for everyone for putting on this event. I met Charlita at one of Clay Clark's event in Las Vegas. It was hot, it was sweltering. I think he got canceled out of wherever they had him, and they were in these tents. And this wonderful, sweet woman came along, this great pastor. I have pictures of us hugging. They just, they treated me like family. I didn't know who they were. Yeah, thank you. I feel that. I feel that right now. And I got to tell you, I was over there trying not to cry because this is just a little bit of what our family's been through simply for trying to live, to raise kids. I'm a father of 5, to open a business. And they don't appreciate people who stand up to them. And I can't say that those weren't stressful things to go through, and we're still going through things. Like some of you in this room, we're still being persecuted, pursued. There's a warrant out for my arrest in Tucson. You can go on our website, realfreedomtalk.com, and catch up on the story, but just absolute rubbish lawfare. I sat through 3 days of a sham of a trial. But I'm going to talk a little bit today. Some thoughts I've had, because we are finding ourselves in a time that we only imagined. Some of us might call them the end times, we hope. Honestly, I think my good friend Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy says that prophecy is conditional. It's a relationship with God. You know these things are going to happen, but look at what happened when Jonah went to Nineveh. They repented, and that judgment was held in check for a time. And I believe that we can still repent as a nation. And I've prayed every day, God spare this nation. And it's hard. It's hard because you don't want to see this move down the road. But I will say this, I'm a father of 5, don't have any grandkids yet. I know many of you have kids and grandkids, but we have got to fight with everything we've got. I'm looking out tonight and I don't see strangers. I see the faces of family out here. Love you right back. Thank you. God granted us liberty as a birthright. And so we don't take kindly to tyranny. This is our history and this is our heritage. I like to say we're Americans. We do not tolerate tyranny.
Come on, bring it, buddy.
And when I went to that Board of Supervisors meeting, after they had framed our business, caused our family, my wife didn't want my kids to play out in the front yard because we had people threatening to kill my children. And I went there like a lion because they've forgotten they work for us, we don't work for them. And I'd never been arrested before. I had no idea that was going to happen. I had no idea I was going to be handcuffed. It was wrong. It was wrong. And they knew they set us up. We had passed our silly COVID inspection.
Why?
And I was sitting back in the booking room with this sheriff's officer, the bald one, hands behind my back. And he said, I'm in so much trouble with my wife because we're patriots. And I said, then why did you do that? He said, I didn't want to lose my job. I said, your job is to protect people like me from people like that. And I told every single one of those sheriff's officers that. And you know what happened? The day after that, there were lines out the door to our coffee shop, people coming from other states to show support. What was that?
I said Jesus was happy about you standing.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, it was a couple days later. Well, let me tell you, that day of the arrest, I went back into the coffee shop. It was noon, so there was not anybody really there. There's a barista in the back washing dishes. I sat down. In comes Krista Reynolds, 84 years old. You can go on to Amazon and see her book, Born to War. It's memoirs of being a child in Nazi Germany and then experiencing the Berlin airlift, being under Soviet rule. Fascinating book. In comes Krista, and she's concerned about me. And she comes over, and I'm sitting down, and I'm looking up, and she says, Kelly, I have not been this afraid since I was a little girl. And my heart went out to her because I had read her book, and I saw that little girl standing. And so I got up on my feet, I put my arms around her, and I said, Krista, you're never going to experience that again as long as there's men like me in the world. And I had to make a decision. Am I going to hide? Am I going to knuckle under because I'd never done anything like this before? Or am I going to stand up for these people? But I'll tell you what happened over the next few days was life-changing. Because we had a round table at the front of the coffee shop, and literally thousands of people came in. I mean, we did a week's worth of sales in a day. Day after day. And I sat there, and people are coming in. They're throwing money on the table for legal fees. They're praying over me. They're coming in and saying, finally somebody stood up. I had a Border Patrol Vortex, Special Forces guy, come in, and he just looked at me like I was just an amazing person. I'm like, wait a minute, you're the guy in fatigues over here. And he said, I've been writing letters to Congress. I've been doing everything. And I look at the TV, and some guy's standing up, and he couldn't believe it. We became lifelong friends. I'm sad to say that he was killed by remdesivir in the hospital. And almost every day I wear a dog tag he gave me with a green stripe down it that says Romans 8:48 on it. But all these people coming in, an elderly lady came in wearing a mask, and we were talking. And as we were talking, she took off the mask and she threw it in the trash. She said, this might kill me, but I can't live like this anymore. And I thought, that is beautiful. That is freedom right there. And the county persecuted us. They tried to say that we were anti-maskers. They tried to change the whole narrative. We got a lawyer, and he told us, well, we got on the same day we got a letter saying we were a public nuisance and they were going to shut us down. And 2 orders of protection filed by these lefty, loony women who accused me of cyber stalking them. They had delivered them at the same time. They waited to do it all at once. Well, this lawyer said, well, let them close you down. I said, they couldn't close us down if they tried. We'd have a line of people out here. Oh, that's good for your case. The hardest thing in the world for me was letting them close us down. 3 days. We didn't know how long it would be. You know, and we had put our life savings into this shop. And then it was so hard for me because I knew they couldn't have done it if they'd have tried. Couldn't have closed us down. And then he negotiated a $2 million settlement with the county for the false arrest. And we said, okay. Well, it comes with a gag order. You got to stop posting on social media. You got to stop talking about this. My wife and I talked. We said, no, we're turning it down. We fired him. We walked away from $2 million, and boy, did we need it. It was never a question, never a question. We're not doing this for money. And it's been a battle ever since. I mean, there's more to the story. You can go to realfreedomtalk.com and watch more of that. But there came a day after all these people were coming in, and I was getting like 3 hours of sleep a night. And in between there, the health inspector came back in somebody from the shop called me. I was at home, said the health inspector's coming. Got in the car, ran down there. He's in there. I looked at him, I said, get out. He said, what? I said, take your things and get out. I thought, what am I doing? But I'll tell you, there came a day later on, and I'm leaving a lot of details out, but there came a day where all the mandates were gone. We'd been through this battle, and 2 inspectors came in. I was there this time. I met them at the door. I said, why are you here? Well, we got a complaint. I said, if you're here to inspect for foodborne illness, come on in, because you haven't done that for 18 months. I have whistleblowers from the health department telling me you didn't even go to the assisted living facilities during this so-called deadly pandemic. And they said, well, we're here for somebody who had a mask complaint. I said, there's no mask mandate. And you guys, you're a bunch of scumbags. You know what you've done to our family. I lectured them all the way back out to their cars, right? Well, I get an email the next day from Teresa Cullen, the Pima County Health Director, who, by the way, Katie Hobbs wanted to be the state health director. Fortunately, the Arizona Senate didn't let that happen. But it basically said, you denied entry to our inspectors, so by April 23rd, we're going to come back, and if you deny them access again, we're going to look at suspending your business license. My response was, I didn't deny them entry. I told them to do their damn job. Sorry for my language. I'm in a church. Forgive me. Yeah. Paul said to the Jews who were telling everybody they need to be circumcised, I wish they'd cut themselves off. So it's a good precedent. No, that's literally what it says. you know. So I'm a preacher's kid. So anyway, where was I? Senior moment here. Okay, so I said, and we don't need your stupid business license. You haven't earned it. You know what you've done to our family. Well, it was coming up toward April 23rd. I put out a social media notice this was going to happen. All of a sudden, everybody's sharing it on social media. Garrett Lewis, the conservative radio show host there in Tucson, is, everybody get to Viva Coffee House on April 23rd. And we had hundreds of people show up. It was amazing. All waiting for the health inspectors. Get a rope. Well, guess what? They didn't show. And 2 days later, the county canceled the entire mask inspection program. But that was the beginning of sorrows, of course. And there's more to the story. I got arrested again for standing with a father whose son had been forced to wear a mask. He was quarantined. Only kids who didn't wear masks were quarantined. He was forced to pick up a dirty mask out of the trash. And we were put through hell for that. We basically, we moved from Tucson for various reasons. One was to be closer to New York and Washington, D.C. for work, but we also were persecuted so severely. They found me guilty of misdemeanor 3 trespassing, which is a little bit more than a parking ticket, but then they started stacking on more misdemeanors, but they went out to the media and acted as if we had committed some sort of felonies that, like it said on the video, the media, I found out, I did some research, I wrote an article for George Magazine on the targeting of school parents, and I found out through some FOIA emails that the National School Board Association, who sent a letter to Biden, to Merrick Garland, saying, hey, you gotta devote federal resources to these horrible parents. Eric Garland wrote the infamous memo saying that school parents are domestic terrorists. Well, I found this email, and guess who they mentioned? The first parent, the only one they specifically mentioned, a Papa Bear. It's a pretty intriguing story. Not a lot of fun, though. So I had this choice. I went through this just sham of a trial. One of the other dads was given a plea deal for $250 and unsupervised probation for a year. All we did was sit and disagree. One of the judges said that, but unfortunately not my judge. Me? 100 days in jail and $10,000 in fines. And we moved to Tennessee, and we got a buyer for our home. We went to close. They say, you can't close. There's a lien on your house. What? Like homeowners dues, or what is this? Well, we find out they'd put a judgment lien on our house. We had to find another $3,000 for a lawyer who got the house closed, but they had seized $10,000, which was against the Arizona Homesteading Act. It's right there in black and white. He said, you have to give that back. They said, we don't care. We don't consider that their homestead. Oh, where we had a garden and backyard chickens where my kids were playing, our house wasn't our homestead. What? But they just didn't care. They didn't care. And, you know, I've written a lot about lawfare, and you and I were talking a bit about lawfare, how people will take the law of the land, which belongs to the people, the law which goes back to Magna Carta, hundreds of years, because the American Revolution was at first seen as the Second English Civil War, because the patriots of old understood a truth repeated throughout humanity's history. Tyrants will use the law itself to bludgeon people into submission. It's in their nature to do so. Thomas Jefferson in 1819 said, law is often but the tyrant's will, and always so when it violates the right of an individual. And we find ourselves in the same predicament today. The law of the people, which was created from English common law to protect us, is being used as a weapon against us. My family should be in another home again. We're looking forward to it, but we're not.
And he said,
And that's okay. I told my wife to keep fighting this fight. This was several months ago. We're probably going to have to put off getting our family into another house. She didn't even think about it. She said, this is more important. So I'm going to be kind of quick. I don't want to take up everybody else's time, but I will say last time I spoke, I was the last one, and there was hardly any time left for me. So we find ourselves in the same predicament today. Yet our present government is arguably worse than what we fought a revolution against. But what can people do when judges and governing authorities fail to perform what Thomas Jefferson called the most sacred of duties of a government, which he said is to do equal and impartial justice to all the citizens? Well, fortunately, Jefferson answered this. A strict observance of the written laws is doubtless one of the high duties of a good citizen, he wrote, but it is not the highest. The laws of necessity, of self-preservation, of saving our country when in danger, are of higher obligation. To lose our country by a scrupulous adherence to written law would be to lose the law itself, with life, liberty, property, and all those who are enjoying them with us, thus absurdly sacrificing the end to the means. Jefferson drew heavily on the writings of John Locke, who wrote, any single man must judge for himself whether circumstances warrant obedience or resistance to the commands of the civil magistrate. We are all qualified, entitled, and morally obligated to evaluate the conduct of our rulers. This political judgment, moreover, is not simply or primarily a right. Like self-preservation, it is a duty to God. A duty to God. As such, it is a judgment that men cannot part with according to the God of nature. It is the first and foremost of our inalienable rights, without which we can preserve no other. I love Thomas Jefferson. The founding fathers also drew on the great Roman orator Cicero, who wrote, if the temporary masters of the state are unjust, that is, if they act contrary to the law of nature, men possessing right reason are under no moral obligation to obey them. And clearly, we're in such a time when our common law is being warped into a weapon to be wielded against the American people, assaulting our sacred rights that the Creator endowed to us and depriving us of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I faced that because here I had a false conviction I thought, are they going to come out to Tennessee and grab me? I flew into Phoenix for America Fest in December. I didn't know if I'd have a welcoming committee at the airport. I had a whole plan. Like, should I dress up as something, like a disguise? No, I decided to face it. So John Adams asked, will the spirits of the people, as yet unsubdued by tyranny, unawed by the menace of arbitrary power, submit to be governed by military force? His answer was emphatic and clear, no. And I just have to say, having been born in Fort Worth, God bless Texas. Thomas Jefferson said it is the will of the nation which makes the law obligatory. And what I came to, I decided, I had this urging and it wasn't for me, not to appeal. Turns out to be able to appeal, which I'm sure we would have won, was $10,000, the exact amount that they seized that we never got back. Kind of made the decision for me. But there was a voice saying, don't appeal. You're going to dignify them by doing that. Defy them. And that's when I started to study. I wrote a whole series, 3 articles called The Art of Defiance. And I recognized that we not only have the right to stand up against injustice, we have a duty to say, you are corrupt, you have broken the social contract, you do not have authority over me. We can and must, as one people, have the will to stand against the abuse of power and practice the age-old art of defiance. It's what built this country. It's not our right, it's our duty. We're the custodians of the law of the land, which itself is only legitimate in so much as it reflects our natural rights. What James Madison called in the 9th Amendment, the rights retained by the people. And honestly, you know, we talk about the rule of law. I have great respect for the rule of law. But what do you do when the people entrusted with the law go from rule of law to rule by law? There's a big difference in that one word. Now, we hope that Charlita and people of her caliber, of which there are probably few these days, will get into office and they can work with the law of the land. I know Eli Crane from Arizona, wonderful ex-Navy SEAL. I know a number of people who are in there fighting, but I can tell you, I got to go to DC, to DC for a total of about 3 weeks last year. And I had so many congressmen tell me in hushed tones, our country's in trouble. And this person and that person and that person are bought out by China. It's very serious. Sam Adams said the liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution, are worth defending at all hazards, and it is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We have received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors, he said. They purchased them for us with toil and danger and expense of treasure and blood and transmitted them to us with care and diligence. You know, as difficult as these trials have been on our family, I haven't had to run into machine gun fire and storm a beach.
Right.
I haven't had to lose limbs overseas. And it is, I know you'll take this in the right spirit, because for Pete's sake, I'm in a church. It is an honor to suffer for righteousness' sake. I said honor, not pleasure. It's not fun. Not fun, but it brings meaning to life. It will bring an everlasting mark of infamy on the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence, without a struggle, or to be cheated out of them by the artifices of false and designing men. I want to thank you all for being patriots. I want to thank you for this warm welcome. I want to thank Charlita for the courage to run against a pit of vipers. I went down this morning to get my little continental breakfast, and TV's on, Immediately, pencil neck comes on the TV. You know pencil neck, right? Adam Schiff, protecting democracy against the insurgents. I got up and turned the TV off. I want to say one thing in closing. Thank you so much, and thank you for the gift. But Charlita, God bless you. And I'm just going to say this. If she wins, that's wonderful. We all win. If she gets cheated out of it or doesn't get into office, there's power over this woman, and she's going to change the world whether she's in office or not.
Why would you be arrested for speaking?
The federal government has been persecuting me and my family for about 4 years. We moved out to Tucson from Bend, Oregon in 2017, in part to get away from the left. We ended up opening a small family coffee shop. The lockdown started. We were targeted by Pima County. We started getting threats, people calling the shop. We didn't know what was going on, and some customers started sending me screenshots and said, "You're on the Pima County Wall of Shame." Well, what is that? It's a website that Pima County had made to list supposedly non-compliant businesses, and they had set up this program. It became this nightmare. So one of the Pima County Board of Supervisors invited me to one of the meetings because I had emailed and said, "Hey, you've wrongly listed us as non-compliant. It's caused my family to have death threats against us." So I went to this board meeting. My wife and kids have to wake up and read these foul comments, so I just started reading them. Everyone knew I wasn't directing these at the board, but they treated it as if I was disorderly simply for reading comments that were on our own social media. Within 30 seconds of speaking, I was surrounded by sheriff's officers. I was handcuffed, and I was let out of the room, and I was arrested for disorderly conduct for speaking. We came to find out later that the chair of the board had actually been the one who made the so-called complaint, had never been to our shop. They wanted to choose a target to assert their authority, and they found that there was somebody who was actually going to come confront them. A year later, I was arrested again for speaking, and actually that second arrest is what's most relevant right now. I got a frantic call from a father. He said that his son was being quarantined. They forced him to wear a mask. He threw it in the nurse's trash, and they made him dig it out of the trash. He said, "Would you come here and witness this? Help me keep calm and help me figure out what to do." I actually called another father. I thought, let's have a couple of witnesses. Now, this is where things get interesting because we were set up. Media worldwide portrayed this incident as 3 large men stormed a school, tried to arrest and kidnap and zip tie a principal. The police were called and they fled. And if you go to my website, you'll see actually what happened, which is nothing of the sort. 3 fathers got arrested for sitting in a school office having a conversation. The main judge in Tucson, he said, "You guys didn't stand up. You didn't take a threatening step toward anyone. All you did was disagree." And then he turned to the school district and said, "You don't get to tell them how they disagree." You look like you might have a question.
I'm just so fascinated that the wickedness of this. Americans need to wake up. This is so unacceptable. It is evil. And when you have actors like this, when you have people like this behaving like this, if you do not push back, if you do not do something, you're guilty. And I thank God for you, Kelly Walker, standing up. I hope folks will go to givesendgo.com/freedomtalk, givesendgo.com/freedomtalk. We'll be right back. The federal government targeted innocent parents who were trying to be advocates for their children.
September 29th, 2021, the National School Board Association sent a letter to Joe Biden asking for federal assistance dedicated to these dangerous parents, and this whole domestic terrorist narrative came about. By October 4th, Merrick Garland issued the memo designating parents as domestic terrorists. Then October 18th, there was a letter by 14 attorneys general sent to Garland and Biden citing this National School Board Association letter as a massive fraud. 1 week ago, in a letter dated October 18th, 2021, my fellow attorneys general and I laid out the facts surrounding the massive fraud that the National School Board Association has perpetrated on the American people. In a letter to the Department of Justice, NSBA accused parents throughout the United States of, quote, domestic terrorism and hate crimes, warranting the invocation of the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism.
We've never seen it in our lifetimes until the nonsense of COVID and the masking and the mandates started to happen. Nobody had ever seen anything like this in our lifetimes. We would never dream that mayors and governors could be so wicked, that school boards could be so wicked. Really, the ugly underbelly of our fellow Americans. We saw it, and it's hideous.
No, you're going to hear this because your health department made us hear this.
Mr. Walker?
You're going to hear this.
Mr. Walker, if
What?
you don't watch your language, I'm going to have you escorted out of the room.
Your health department threw us under the
Sir,
bus,
I'm
and the
asking
constant
you-
barrage of this kind of language
Sergeant at Arms,
has been sent.
please escort this man out of the hearing room.
No. Your health department threw us to the rage
Sir?
mob.
I've asked you to behave and to...
I have a right to speak.
Okay.
I have a right to speak.
Let go of the podium.
I'll censor the language, but you need to understand
No.
that my family has been submitted to threats. My family has been submitted to threats because of you. Death threats on my staff. You are violating my civil rights.
You are resisting.
I'm not resisting. I'm just strong.